I'm in the process of reworking a first draft of a novel. I've written a lot of like shorter stories, I guess, mostly novellas, and this past year I made the goal that I was going to write a novel, and I did it. And so now I'm in the process of sort of revising it and editing it, making it the best that it can be. And so this is just some writing advice that I wish I would have told my younger self, or that I wish I could have known earlier, or things that I think might help you if you're trying, you're in the same boat as I was just a year ago trying to finish that first draft. So if you're trying to get started with writing, here are some things that might help. Number one, an idea will only take you so far. For me, it's kind of like if you wanted to go on a road trip and you knew you wanted to go to Banff. That is a start, right? But the idea alone won't get you there. For an idea to be a viable story and then eventually a novel, you need more than just a cool hook. I think a lot of times I'll hear people say like, "Oh, I have this great idea. It's where this character does this thing and he's like this and it's a great start, but it doesn't have the complexity to sustain a full-length story or a novel. It's a point of departure, but it's just the start of the planning, right? Okay, I want to go to New York. Now how do I get there? Number two, to plot or not to plot. For me, the solution, I mean, I can only speak to my own experience, right? And I don't know everything. I'm not a published author. I'm not a professional. I don't have a degree in creative writing. But these are things that have worked for me, and so hopefully they can help you. But okay. The solution for me was a little bit of both. When I set out to write the novel I'm currently revising, I started with the idea, I started this really early on. I was like, okay, 5,000 words pantsed, 50,000 words plotted. And that's the debate as old as time, are you a pantser or a plotter? And I think the solution is to be a little bit of both. For me, I feel like I want to be that more like discovery writer, right? Another way to visualize it maybe is architect versus gardener. I want that story to kind of grow naturally. For some people, that gardening experience happens when they outline. For me, outline feels more like a chore. And so what I try to do is I try to just, if I'm excited about an idea, I have an idea for these characters that are going to do this thing, I go and I write the scene that I think would be interesting, and I write as fast and as much as I can do. And I capitalize on that momentum and that early on, that excitement, and just see what I can get done. And then at some point, sometimes it's around 5,000 words, sometimes it's more or less, right? That excitement starts to wear down, and then all of a sudden I have to figure out, okay, now where does it go from here? Here's a cool scene, but how does this fit into a grander plot? How does this work out in the grander sense of a novel or a story, or is it a short story maybe? But for me, it starts out with just, okay, you have an idea for characters, put them in a box and see what happens. Okay, now let's make sure that sort of fits into this grander novel plot, right? And so for me, I try to sit down and plot out some things that take those different scenes that I write early on and help them work towards a larger story. And I feel like I'm more of a discovery writer in general, but that there's value in brainstorming a loose outline, even if it's just like a preliminary roadmap that you eventually scratch most of. Having that initial like, okay, how am I getting from these points to the next point? Just having like a rough idea of where you go, even if you take a detour that is better for the overall story, helps me to get the things to the next step, and it helps me finish those things with more direction and a more cohesive story overall. So I think it's a great place to start. And having some sense of how the events of the story unfold, they help me to not get stuck and also know what to write next. So that if I hit that writer's block, or I hit that first roadblock or stumbling block, I can say, okay, you know what, but this is what needs to happen next, so how can I get there? Number three, don't force the timeline. For me, I really wanted to publish a book within a certain time frame. I was like, okay, by 25, I'm going to have that published book. I'm going to have a book deal or whatever, right? And for me, it's really exciting when you finish a first draft that you're like, I got to get it published now. I got to send it to everyone I know. I got to publish it. But it's important for me, at least, and I think it's important for all new authors, to step back and look at it objectively. I think you need a critical eye, and some expert editorial assessments don't hurt either. For me, it helps to put it away for a minute. Maybe you work on a different creative project. Maybe you just spend some time reading for a bit, and then you can go back to it with kind of fresher eyes. But I think it is a crucial step in writing a good book, is that several rounds of edits and revising to make it the best, most polished piece that it can be. They always say like writing is rewriting is rewriting is rewriting. So, if you got to start somewhere, a first draft is a great place to start, right? A rough first draft is the great place to start, but it doesn't end the second you get past that first step. It's better to write a good book slowly than publish a bad book quickly. And so take your time and the rest will come. Number 4, just reading isn't enough to learn the craft of writing. What I mean by this is you have to write and write a lot. You have to practice, and for me, going back through old work is also helpful because I can kind of analyze and say, this sentence was good, but it didn't fit in this spot, or this paragraph doesn't flow, or whatever the thing is, and kind of analyzing, sort of having like a growth mindset. And like an analogy for this is maybe music, right? Listening to jazz does not a jazz pianist make. It's good to absorb writing and it's good to be inspired by it, but without the discipline and without the practice and the mistakes and the constant drive to improve, you'll never get there. And so for me, having a growth mindset is how you go from a wannabe author who says, I have a great idea for a book, and someone who's got a finished draft to work with. Number 5, you can't edit a blank page. This is common writing advice, and I think it's helpful to remember. You're never going to be a great author when you start, right? No one's born a published author. You got to start somewhere. So it's also important for me to remember that you don't have to publish the first thing you write. So you don't have to be like the best, most proficient author to start writing a book, because what you start with is not necessarily what you end with. And so maybe it sucks at the beginning, but at some point, hopefully you get to that point in your journey where you can have the knowledge and the skill set and maybe it's an editor that really helps to kind of guide that story to become the best that it can be. But you have to start, and in order to learn, you got to write. So if you're sitting at home and you're wondering if you should finally take up that challenge of writing that first draft, and you have a great idea and you're like, I don't know if I should start, maybe I should wait till I'm a better writer, let this video be the sign that you need to get started, because you will get there, but only if you put, quote unquote, pen to paper and you start. Thanks for watching.